This tutorial is going to show you how to use a pretty nifty command that I misunderstood. I sort of overlooked it for a long time because I took a look at the name of the command and I thought I knew what it meant, and I didn't understand it at all. It's actually pretty slick. So I just have a couple of shapes on the screen here that I'm going to go ahead and select. And take a look at the options underneath our model menu. Of course, we have the basic extrude on here, which just gives the missing dimension to any two-dimensional shape. Say you have a square that has a depth and a width, and you need to give it a height. You extrude it, give it a height, and then you have a three-dimensional object. Pretty straightforward. Now, extrude along a path is a very powerful tool. It has a lot going on. I'm going to skip over that for now. Tapered extrude allows you to create an extrude with sloped sides, like a sort of like a pyramid or a cone shape. Sweep, of course, makes lathe objects, you know, a wine glass or a vase or banister or something. But the one that I kind of didn't pay much attention to was multiple extrude. I just assumed that meant that you could extrude more than one shape at the same time. You know, big deal. That's not at all what it does. It's actually a very powerful tool. Say, for example, I wanted to create a ramp in my scene here. So I have these two rectangles selected on the screen. You can see there's the sort of the big square and the long skinny rectangle along the back. If I go ahead and start the multiple extrude operation, you can see even with the preview, you can see what it's doing. It's taking, I've got it set to 2 feet here, it's taking the first shape and extruding it up to the second shape, a distance of 2 feet. So there's the 2 feet height. I can lower this here in the preview, make it 12 inches, say OK. And there's the same idea. This is my ramp. I'm going to go and switch to OpenGL mode here. And I'll throw a color on it so you can see the shape a little bit easier. Use our orbit tool to orbit around it. That's pretty slick. That's a ramp shape with basically one operation. There's other ways that you could do this. For example, you could come over here to an end view, you know, side view, draw that shape out and extrude it horizontally and pretty much get the same effect. Extrude it this way here instead of giving it a height. But what would happen if you wanted to create a ramp that had two sides to it? So it had a sort of a ridge running down the middle, going to a point with two sides on either side. If I switch over here to top plan view, I can do that with a multiple extrude even after the shape is created. Like so many things, I can double click on it and go into, get there, double click and go into multiple extrude mode here. And select just this top shape here. And I'm going to go ahead and grab this long skinny guy and make it just a little square up here in the corner. And when I exit this edit mode, you can see something's going on there. If I switch back over here to right isometric and OpenGL, you can see that, yeah, I've been able to take that shape and give it this sort of double bladed ramp. So I've got an angle over here and an angle over here. That's kind of a cool shape that would be a little bit harder to do with other methods. You could get some solid subtractions in there, but you know, we're getting into 4 or 5 steps to create this shape with other means. That's kind of cool. I'm going to go ahead and delete this guy and just go back to top view, paste back in my original rectangle. You know, what if I wanted to have that same shape, but I wanted it just to come to a point? I didn't want that little square landing. Well, I don't even have to use another shape. I can just grab a 2D locus point and just drop a locus at that top left corner there. I'll select them both. Switch back over here to right isometric. You don't have to be in right isometric to make this work. You can just for you to see what's going on here to make it a little bit easier to see. Now if I go to multiple extrude, leave that 1 foot height in there, sure enough, there it is. There's our double bladed ramp there going just to a point with no little square. Now there are, however, a few pitfalls. Again, top plan, paste back in my original guy here. What happens if I want my original ramp, my just one-sided ramp, but I want it coming up to an edge here? I don't want it to come to a single point, but I also don't want that little landing that I had with my first example. So I can grab the line tool, and I should have no problem drawing a line across here and using that as a multiple extrude, except there is one little catch here. I'm going to go ahead and click on the top left corner and move over here to the right corner. Select them both. Again, just for visibility, jump back over to right isometric. And I'm going to do my multiple extrude now. Go ahead and click OK and switch to OpenGL so you can see what's going on. Wait, something happened here. That's not exactly what we had in mind. That's not really what I wanted. Let's throw the color on here again to see. You can see a little bit more clearly. What it really did here was it just made the shape we made a moment ago with the 1 point. It extruded this shape up to a point And then I thought, oh wait, there's another point over here. So we just created this little wall here on the far side of our shape. Not at all what we wanted to do. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that, top plan, paste back in my guide. And this time I'm going to reverse the direction of this line manually by clicking on the right corner and going over here to the left corner. Now when you're working with NURBS curves and more advanced shapes, you can change the direction of the shape in the object info palette. Can't do that with our lines here, so we're just going to go ahead and grab those two. And now I'll extrude them again. And we have the shape that we actually wanted. Switch over to OpenGL so you can see that again. There it is. There's the, oops, orbit tool. There's that wedge shape that we were looking for, just extruding up to that one point. So that's something that you have to be aware of, sort of the direction of objects. Now that becomes particularly important when you're dealing with multiple shapes. Now you don't have to go straight to a line or you can use pretty much any other shape. For example, I can use a circle. So if I want to make something that you see as sort of duct work, where you were going from some square ducting into some round pipe, for example, and you needed that little sort of coupling thing to happen between those two, and you wanted to create something like that. Well, I could grab now the circle tool and just click in the middle of the object and just drag in any old direction. I'm just going to just over here at random select both the shapes, switch back over to the right view, and now I'll go ahead and do my multiple extrude. In fact, let me make that 2 feet so you can see a little bit better what's going on here. Switch over to OpenGL. Now that's a cool shape. It's not at all what I wanted. Whoops, I scooched my screen out of the way. Looks like some sort of turbine part, or a modern art coffee table or something. Pretty cool shape, but nothing like what I actually wanted. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Go back to the top plan view and show you kind of another little trick that you can do. You can still create this shape. You just got to be a little bit more clever about how you align the handle points. Now in your object info here, you can notice that we have our little handle selection points. If I go ahead and grab my circle and pay a little more attention, my first thought with this was, oh, okay, I'm going to click and drag toward the upper left-hand corner where the origin point of my my rectangle. And doing that gets you close, but not quite. Just by trial and error, I found that if I just drop myself 45 degrees from that point, so I'm going straight at this edge, I can select that circle and the square together. And now when I go ahead and do my multiple extrude, I do get that nice tidy shape that I was after. There's that square going into a circle that I was looking for. I'm going to throw some color back on there so you can see it a little more clearly again. So there it is. That's pretty slick that you can do that shape pretty quickly, but you got to be careful about how you align the shapes together. You may have to do a little bit of trial and error, but you should be able to use an octagon or a hexagon or pretty much any other shape that you can create, but you're going to need to line up all the vertices of the two shapes so they don't get all twisted up. You can do the exact same thing with a loft object in the 3D modeling tools, and even there you got to be careful with how you line things up, but you have more tools at your disposal with the loft tool to fix some of those problems. This way you just kind of have to do it manually. There is, however, you can also do multiple objects here. Just to show you one last thing here, it doesn't have to be two objects. Here I have my original square, a smaller square, and a vertices. So if I go ahead and select all of those points and then do a multiple extrude with those, I can get a multiple step action happening on here. So if you take a look at this pyramid, I've got a pyramid that has two angles to it, which is sort of fun as well. Now if I wanted to create the Washington Monument, kind of an obelisk thing, I would have to do that with a loft shape because I'd need to be able to control the spacing between these vertices. There's really no way for me to grab one of these vertices and move it separately, but you can do that in 3D with the loft surfaces. But again, there's just you're not really limited to just one set of extrusions. You can do multiple steps with this tool as well. So a lot of fun, clever things that you can do with this model menu and down here to multiple extrude that you might not necessarily have been aware of simply judging by its name. So play with that and have some fun.